Hi there, welcome to No Nonsense Whiskey. My name's VinPF, and on today's episode we've got something not only a little bit special as sometimes I usually say, but something pretty astounding. Now, you won't recognise this in front of me here unless you've got a real keen eye on what's going on in the background with kind of independent bottlings and things like that, because this is something that's not even really independently bottled technically, and I'll get into that in just a moment. Where I got this bottle from, obviously over the years I've been kind of making friends with a lot of other whiskey tubers and people in the industry and whatnot, and you'll know someone who I often talk about on the channel is a guy called Mark Littler, who has his own channel, but he's a kind of cask broker and also an antiques dealer and things like that. Sells a lot of very expensive and very rare and exotic whiskies on his website. So he recently emailed me and said, I've got something that I would like you to try. It's a Springbank 25-year-old, but not really as we know it. Now, he's done a video on this as well. It's going to release about the same sort of time, so I'm going to drop a link in the description below to that. So if you want to get a lot more of the history on this bottle, I'm going to cover it in a kind of overarching elements. But his video will go into the actual details of this bottling and the other bottlings in this kind of range, let's say. Again, the inverted quotes will be explained a little bit later. But yeah, so the link in the description below will give you more information on this if you want it. I'm going to sort of talk a bit about basics of it and do a little bit of a tasting on it, because he doesn't really do tastings over on his channel. He's kind of left that to me. Now, this one here is called the Sin 20. Now, what happened was, and I laugh because this is truly, truly, truly astounding. In 1992, a syndicate of a group of people who like whiskey went to the Springbank distillery and bought 20 casks. Now, I think they had been already distilled and put in these casks, and they were 5 days old when they bought them. And they bought 20 sequential numbered casks from Springbank for something like £400 per cask. My mind, I've seen the receipt, I've read and my mind boggles. But as Mark Littler will tell you, it was a different time then. Springbank had really only just reopened, and they were struggling. The single malt market was nowhere near what it is today, even as few as a couple of decades ago. And that's important to remember that to people that are drinking whiskey right now, is that the 80s and the early 90s was a completely different place for single malt whiskey, absolutely a different place. So yeah. The cool thing about these that I want to tell you about is they didn't just take these casks away. Oh, no. They left them at the Springbank distillery. So this is Springbank distillate they're all kind of refill casks. I have to say, I don't think that kind of new oak or anything like that would have really done these any favours. This is a really well-aged whiskey, and refill casks are ideal for that. But it's been aged at the Springbank distillery like all the rest of the casks were. And what they did was, this syndicate, they waited and waited and waited, and then they steadily bottled from their own casks using their own labels, which is similar to this. This is the kind of most well-aged one. They're usually white labels, and they had them bottled and labelled at the Springbank distillery by Mitchell's, and shared them out between the syndicate. And, give them out to friends and whatnot. So this has been going on for a couple of decades. And we're only just seeing this now because, unfortunately, one of the syndicate members died. And the widow of that fella basically wants to just sell these on. Now, these are going to be for sale on Mark Littler's website. Again, links in the description below. And there's a multitude of different ages there, from between 16 years and 25 years. Very limited amounts of them, because obviously some of these have been drank throughout the years. There's more of the older ones, which is cool, and less of the younger ones. They are expensive. The younger one is something like sort of £300 and this one is going to be £560 Very expensive, way above something that I would usually be able to cover. So, obviously a massive thanks to Mark for sending this over to me to cover. And I'm going into a greater detail because I really want you guys to kind of understand what we have here. These are all cask strength. It's basically Springbank, but stuff that we don't usually get to try. At least I don't get to try. So I'm quite enthusiastic about this. This is really just an astounding thing. It's also worth noting as well that Phil at Whisky Wednesday, he's going to be covering one of the other bottles, I think coming soon, maybe next week at time of recording. So keep an eye out for that, and if I catch the link for that, I'll drop that in the description below. So if you're late watching this, you'll be able to nip over there and get that. So yeah, £400 a cask, obviously, you would not even remotely get that from kind of almost any distillery now, let alone 30 litre cask or whatever. But these are all refill hoggies, so all very interesting stuff. So I whittled on for quite a long time there, way more than I usually do, but it's worth delving into the history of this a little bit. And again, if that interests you, if you want to hear more of that story, then make sure you go and check out Mark's video, because he's going to cover that in way more depth than me. Let's get onto the tasting of this thing and see what we've got. Now, I mean, it's Springbank, it's 25 years old. This isn't going to be bad whiskey, of course. Let's get onto the nose and see what we've got. I mean, so Springbank to me is, there's always something kind of earthy. I was going to say weird then, that's not fair at all. Something different and vegetal and funky about it. The weird thing about this is I don't really get that on the nose immediately. Yeah, I could probably dig deep and pick that up, but maybe it's just because I know that it's Springbank. But for me, it's just so juicy and fragrant. It's unreal. It's like, do you remember those kind of those tropical chews things we used to have as kids? I don't know if you get them worldwide, but we used to get the kind of the blackjack ones and the little tropical ones. It's like that. Like bags of like rhubarb and citrus going on. And not really over oaked either. I'm not getting much in the way of vanillas or tannins or anything like that on the nose. Just a really chilled out whiskey. You can tell it's refined. I mean, this is cask strength. This is 51.4%, and I'm not getting a kind of waft of that alcohol note at all. My nose is right in there. Okay, let's try on the palate. I mean, I cover a lot of whiskey, and there's some really good stuff out there. And we're trying to do this thing where at the moment where we kind of like unlearn age statements, right? So that it's not important to have, if it's got 10 years on the bottle, it doesn't really matter that much. It's kind of something I always impress in. You can make good whiskey at 3 or 4 years old, and now I'm going to be quoted saying, I mean, you absolutely cannot compare with 25-year Springbank. It's just astonishing stuff. It's a little more oak coming through now. For me, huge tropical notes coming through again. It's so thick and viscous. The mouthfeel is like truly luxurious, that kind of thing. That's what that age has really given us. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of get my reaction on camera really kind of like unfettered and unedited, because yeah, as I said before, man, if your pocketbook is big enough for this, then absolutely. I mean, again, I will say, I mean, this is far too rich for me. There's absolutely no way I could afford to buy something like this. But you can bet your bottom, if I could, I would be, because it's just incredible stuff. Absolutely incredible. I haven't tried any of the other in the range, but there's not many years in between them. There's another 25-year-old that's the same price, and then there's like a 24 or 23, and then down to like 16, whatever. It's not every year. But yeah, I mean, I would say, like, I should have said this at the top of the show, really, but this is definitely 100% not going to interest every single person that watches this. You might want to watch it just vicariously, that, great, I got to try it, whatever, but you're probably not going to be reaching out to buy this. But if this reaches even one person who is like into this sort of thing, that kind of like, I mean, for me, really expensive, but if you're into that kind of expensive whiskey vibe and you've been after something like this kind of, independently bottled Springbank vibe, then maybe this will interest you. But really, again, this video was just to show it off, really, because it's not often I get an email saying, do you want to try something like this? I mean, I get emails a lot saying, do you want to try X new distillery or this? Yes, of course I do. But when you get an email that says, do you want to try an independently bottled 25-year-old Springbank cask strength, I defy anybody to reply back to that saying no. I can't even fathom it. But yeah, please go check out Mark's video on this if you want to find out more about these bottles and the rest of the range. And if you are that person, that one person that it has money itching in their pocket for something like this, then there'll be links in the description below for you, my friend. But if you're just here to watch me drink this, then I'll have one more sip and I'll say thanks for indulging me on this one, and I'll be back to normal reviews that certainly I can afford coming up soon. Cheers.